Welcome back to another edition of the Willie Bragg Show. And once again, we have Lucy, Blue Moon Red Wine, candidate for U.S. House of Representatives in the 14th District in New York, to try to unseat Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Welcome back, Lucy. How are you? It's been a minute.
Hi, how are you? I'm so sorry. I had a mess up with the times because I basically took down my Twitter because Twitter was driving me crazy, and now I only use it like very, very, very sparingly. So I didn't see your last message.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah, I mean, it happens. I mean, we none of us are perfect. Just it happens. I mean, the important thing is you're here today. So, why don't you? I kind of introduce you, but I think you're probably going to be better at introducing yourself. So, introduce yourself.
Okay, so I think people here might already know me, but my name is Lucy. I'm from New York City. I basically had this crazy idea of running as a write-in, which some people think is insane. Other people think it's narcissistic. Other people think it's just like kind of a lost cause. That's fine. All of those things. The thing is, like, I actually think a lot of the people that I know that refuse to run are the ones, the very ones that I think should be running. I actually wish people were doing this more in small towns in the US, because I think that if you're in a small town, you have more of a fighting chance. Maybe people are doing it in small towns and I don't know about it, but I just wanted, because kind of AOC is kind of a national figure, I figured that if I did it, maybe other people, the idea would kind of percolate. You know how these ideas kind of percolate? You like speak it out into the wind, you feel like you've done nothing, but eventually somebody else, you realize that the idea kind of spreads. So that was like my main goal with this.
I call it democracy. So, and you're exercising your democratic rights, lowercase d, democratic rights. So, I'm glad you're doing what you're doing. You inspired me 2 years ago when you decided to run as a write-in to end my critical support for AOC. I was like, this is as a good a time as any to say critical support for AOC, where my patients ran thin on her. I was like, why support her when there's a better candidate? So, thank you for liberating me from the orbit of Alexandria Ocasio Cortez.
Right, and that's like the case everywhere there's a better candidate, because everywhere in the country there's great people. It's just that those great people, there's no system to prop them up. Most of the third parties are corrupted, which is another reason that I'm doing this. So people might not know this, but and this is like something that is very specific to New York, and that's kind of why I started being loud about it on social media. But there's a bad echo. Okay, I'm sorry. I don't know.
I don't
I
hear
don't.
it on my side.
You don't hear it? Okay, good. So there's only two people that qualified as independents in New York State. In like, not even Jill Stein, who had the entire Green Party, doing signatures, uh, qualified as a independent candidate. Only Diane Sayre and Jose Vega, who come from the LaRouche organization. And the LaRouche organization is pro BRICS, which a lot of people see as a good thing, you know. But they've been pushing this idea of peaceful coexistence, which is the idea that, NATO, US, like allied forces, all of this, Israel, are kind of going to peacefully join BRICS without some kind of fight. And after a year of genocide, I really think this idea is delusional, that the United States is just going to peacefully join BRICS. And they also, like, one of the things, one of the things that tipped me off and annoyed me about them was at one of the protests, which I thought that they would support against Richie Torres last year. They so peaceful coexistence. Peaceful coexistence was an idea from Khrushchev, and the idea was that capitalist and socialist countries could peacefully coexist without any confrontation. And this idea was basically repudiated by the Bolsheviks, who thought that all of this would eventually lead to some kind of confrontation, which I think is what we're looking at today. This is obviously a confrontation, what we're seeing today. It doesn't look like peaceful coexistence is possible with these brutal animals in the IDF, like, incessantly murdering people. This does not look like peaceful coexistence to me. So there's this thing called Uniting for Peace. It's a stipulation in the United Nations that they have enough countries right now where they could override the veto, the United States veto, and they could send peacekeeping troops to Israel. But they don't want to do it because they don't give a shit about the Palestinians. All of this is a theatric charade in order to eventually get the United States and Israel to join BRICS. So this is how the BRICS, like a lot of people think that the BRICS is going to save us. The BRICS is playing both sides. They're not really on the side of the people. They are trying to develop an alternative economic system, which is all well and good. But at the end of the day, when you've been horse-collared and kicked out of the Richie Torres protests, and then Diane Sayre calls into the show, she's the independent candidate that's running against Kirsten Gillibrand, to insist that Israel has a right to exist, you start to realize that all of these people say the line, Israel has a right to exist. Whenever there's a group on the ground that, like, challenges them, for example, Roger Meadows asked her about reparations, and she was like, why do we have to have reparations, if the economy is improved for everyone? So yeah, the thing that these people do is they'll shove aside local concerns and the reality that people on the ground are suffering incredible violence, whether it's like direct, economic, whatever, and they want you to be peaceful. It's not that they want the establishment, they want you to be peaceful. And the other thing is that in a lot of their peace coalition meetings, they heavily promote the Kennedys. So they heavily promote the Kennedys. They promote the idea that if we could just, kind of go back in time and get a liberal savior like JFK, then everything would be all well and good, and there would be peaceful coexistence, and the United States would join BRICS. Well, that's not really the case, because if you actually look at the history of the Kennedys believed in domino theory. They were fiercely anti-communist. They developed the Peace Corps in order to kind of like push the idea that there needed to be an alternative, charity, basically, to communism. The Kennedys expanded the use of Agent Orange. They initiated the use of Agent Orange in Vietnam. The Kennedys started the blockade against Cuba. They introduced the vaccine law, and the use, what we now know is the use of biological weapons, the vaccine, against the American people. So the Kennedys were tapping the phones of black activists. So the Kennedys were not like, they try to present the Kennedys like the Kennedys were some glorious, wonderful people. The Kennedys were not that. They were basically reformists, at a time when people are getting really rowdy. So the LaRouche organization is trying to, and they constantly talk fondly about Robert Kennedy. They're trying to present the Kennedys as our saviors. And when I realized that, I really started to break away from even these independent campaigns like Jose Vega, Diane Sayre, etc. Because I feel like I really hate being manipulated, and I just, I just don't take kindly to it, is basically what I'm saying.
Right. Yeah. Well, I always felt like that the Kennedy family in the last 25 years of my life, I which is basically half of my life, felt like the Kennedy family were overall overrated. I used to fall under the category of that liberal Camelot myth of, oh, the Kennedys, as if they were really going to just save our society or what have you. And they are a corrupt family. I mean, Joseph Kennedy was a sympathizer of Adolf Hitler, for example, just like Prescott, was it Prescott Bush way back when, was also sympathetic with Hitler. So a lot of these powerful families in America, I mean, these elitists, they're terrible people through and through.
Terrible people, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And JFK, he had all of these affairs. The women in his family always mysteriously kill themselves. The women in this family, because the men are like serial womanizers. Robert Jr. Robert Kennedy Jr. He had a relationship with the Epsteins, with Ghislaine Maxwell. I don't know the extent of what that relationship was. He went into it recently, I noticed, because people were calling him out. They were like, well, what's going on with the picture? All of these pictures. Allegedly, he was almost set up in marriage with Ghislaine Maxwell. So, So the LaRouche organization is basically, they're not libertarians because they support the BRICS coalition, and libertarians don't support the BRICS coalition. Libertarians are basically neoliberals economically, but like socially they're libertarian, but otherwise they're actually, libertarians are fully Zionist party at this point. Like, they support the candidacy of Javier Milei, and they had Tucker Carlson promote the candidacy of Javier Milei. Tucker Carlson is not independent. He's in the CIA, Even Putin joked about the fact that he's in the CIA, and everybody acted like it was a joke that we shouldn't take seriously. It is serious. He's in the CIA. His dad was in the CIA. His dad actually worked on a radio channel called Radio Martí, which was based in Miami, and it was supposed to transmit anti-communist messaging to Cuba, but a lot of people in Cuba could, it was hard to pick up the signal. They also block the radio waves and stuff. So not that many people in Cuba listen to Radio Martí, but that was the goal of Radio Martí, to basically do anti-communist propaganda, and Tucker Carlson is basically following in his father's footsteps. Now, Argentina is not a communist country, it never has been, but tell that to one of these American libertarians, and they'll look at you like you're crazy.
And listen, they even think paved roads, taxpayer-funded paved roads, is communism.
Right.
That's how brainwashed they are. So I mean, they thought that we've been under socialism since FDR became president. I mean, and for crying out loud, I mean, and I mean, they call her Comrade Kamala. I mean, please.
Yeah, the irony is that they're the ones that are supporting Zionism, right? They're supporting a Zionist candidate, Javier Milei, and the Zionists originally, they had the vote. This is what I try to explain to people. They had the vote of the Stalinists and the United States in the creation of the State of Israel. Those are the votes that they got for the creation of the State of Israel in the United Nations in the 40s.
Very true. I'll tell you something funny about that. When I say that to an SJW or a woke skull today and an evangelical Christian, they look at me both like I'm nuts for saying that. It's not true. They both had the same reaction, and they both pretty much tell me to fuck off when I tell them that.
Right.
As if I'm the historical revisionist and all that.
Right. So that's the real history. The reality is that the Peronists in Argentina, they voted present, essentially. So did a lot of other Latin American countries. But Argentina was the first one to vote present. It's called the vote of historic neutrality. And it was kind of considered a positive at the time for the Arab world, because Israel basically needed really, really fanatical support to succeed, especially in the inception of their country. And they didn't get that from Argentina at the time. And that's why it was so important to put in this cuck, and not only to infiltrate our government in the United States, which they've done very successfully, but do that to all of the countries in Latin America as well. And you can see that today. The president of Argentina is pro-Israel, of Guatemala is also pro-Israel. There's only a handful that are not pro-Israel. So, and it's very sad because like a lot of these countries got, like in the 70s and 80s, a lot of those dictatorships that passed through, Latin America and the Caribbean, they were supported not just by the United States, but also by Israel. So Israel trained the police. They killed a lot of people in a lot of these countries, including the worst one was Guatemala. Israel helped train and kill 200,000 Guatemalans in the early 80s, and that figure is as high as the Palestinians today.
Yeah, and anybody who's defending that carnage in Gaza, I for the life of me, I just can't understand. I just can't understand people who would even just defend them, especially since this shit happened prior to October 7th, but the fact that people are still defending what the country is doing today, it is beyond me. Baby parts are found in Gaza, and just and it's not just Muslims are getting killed; or Christians are getting killed, and it just it's just the country needs to. Does it need to exist if they're out there engaging in an extermination, an ethnic cleansing?
No, I think right to exist was kind of like a linguistic trick that they used to trick people in the West, people like us that did not grow up over there, basically to believe that the Jews are a oppressed minority over there. And I personally, like, there was a time when I believed it where I was like, oh, it's a war between religions. You know how they like try to present it as a war between religions? So if you just watch mainstream media, you'll believe it. You'll be like, oh, so at the end of the day, it's what Desert Mantis says. A country is basically like by the agreement of the people that live there if they want to draft a constitution. But if the people that live there don't like the armed forces that are there, then it's basically a dictatorship. That's what Israel is. It's a dictatorship.
Yeah, of course
like
it is a dictatorship.
Brutal dictatorship. Yeah.
And what needs to happen, there needs to be a successor state. I would say not a Jewish state, not a Palestinian state, but just a secular state that happens to have both populations in there, but it's not officially for one group or the other. And it's obviously going to be a Palestinian majority that's going to live in that state. And that's going to be the only conceivable way. Other than that, we're just going to see the status quo.
Well, I agree completely. And that's the thing about the independent candidates running that people don't understand, are very pro the two-state solution. Now, there are some arguments to be made for the two-state solution. Like some people will say, like, look, it's just about gradually building a base. At least you can stop the occupation of the West Bank. But you're failing to understand the central problem is that these people want everything, not just Palestine. They also want a chunk of Syria, Iraq. They want to continuously spread. This is the nature of imperialism, continuously spreading. It's like if you had told the United States at the 13 colonies to just limit themselves to the 13 colonies. No, they didn't do that. They spread. They wanted they did the Louisiana Purchase. Then they took a third of Mexico. Then they wanted Alaska and Hawaii, and now they want the whole world. The United States. So now that there's American military bases all over the world, so the key issue is the ideology. It doesn't matter because they will never content themselves to some tiny sliver of land. It's not about safety.
I saw the map of this greater Israel, and it's a goofy ass map going way down into Saudi Arabia, taking over all Lebanon, going on into Syria, on into the Turkish border.
Yep.
Yeah. And if I'm correct, I think maybe even the eastern part of Egypt too.
Yeah, so my husband's Egyptian. He's an American citizen now, but he was born in Egypt, and he he mentioned at one point like that the IDF in the 70s, they were like, around the block from his house.
Wow.
In Cairo. So the IDF got really far in the 70s when they were fighting with Egypt. They got very far into Egypt. They almost took the Sinai Peninsula, the entire thing. They like the Sinai Peninsula because it's like a place where there's like scuba and tourism. And it's also like a very strategic place for international shipping. So this is a land grab. That's what it is. It's the same thing as it's just like a colonialist movement. And it's not going to stop. They're not going to content themselves. Now, you can say, for example, like individual Israelis might content themselves if they're fear-mongered into this idea that they need a Jewish nation. Perhaps that's correct. I'm not sure. But at the end of the day, you could be Jewish and live in any of these other countries. It's fine. Like nothing. Israel is what creates lack of safety for Jewish people in the region. Before the creation of Israel, the Muslim world actually received Jewish refugees from Europe during the Inquisition, for example. Jewish people left Spain and they went to Morocco and like some of these other countries. So it's the Muslim world has actually been a refuge for Jewish people right up until the creation of Israel. They don't want to talk about that. They gloss over that history because it's very inconvenient. Because what they're trying to say is that there are the thing that they say very frequently is there are 48, I don't know how many there are, like Muslim countries. Well, there are 48 Muslim and Arab countries. We only have this little piece. Well, Muslim and Arab countries this is a very large bucket of different nations. For example, think about how stupid it would be for you to say there are 76 Christian countries. Well, those are very different countries. You have England, France. If you think of Christian majority countries, the United States, I don't know, Mexico, those are very different countries. So to say you have, imagine if someone would say you have 78 Christian countries, we only have one. Well, all of those countries are different countries.
Yeah, different countries with different forms of government, different ideologies. When people used to talk about the caliphate after 9/11, I've always thought that caliphate was bullshit because this fear mongering about the caliphate is like, how in the world can you get the entire Muslim world to attack the West when you have conflicting factions, kind of like the left, bickering at each other? And why the American left can't get anything done? Well, the Muslim world can't get anything done either because they have conflicting factions, ideologies. You have some countries that are more secular, like Syria, for example, and then you have Saudi Arabia, which is a theocracy, and I mean it just.
And they're the ones that boost the theocracy. Like they've always boosted Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, and Saudi Arabia is actually the source. It's more dangerous to the West than Iran ever could be.
Right. So they boost the theocracies, and then they complain that the Muslim world is after them when they're the ones that have been boosting all of these extreme, I guess, groups that believe in the caliphate. A lot of these they're terrorist groups that are boosted by the West. So, they are responsible for the creation of these extreme groups. Yeah.
Like, for example, the PLO versus Hamas situation. Hamas was they weren't created by the Mossad, but they were groomed by the Mossad, and they had a divide and conquer strategy by offering fundamentalism as opposed to the secular leftism of the PLO, which at the time when the Cold War was happening, they were orbiting around the Soviets. And a lot of Americans don't understand that the PLO is an umbrella organization was largely left-leaning, ranging from Stalinism all the way to social democracy. That's inside the PLO is a coalition of many different ideologies, of vaguely left ideologies of sorts, and the Israelis, they basically created a situation where Hamas was normalized. They had nobody to blame but themselves for it.
Right. Yeah.
Just like the United States has nobody to blame for 9/11 other than themselves when they backed the rebels against the Soviets in Afghanistan during the 1980s. Very similar.
Right.
Blowback.
Well, it's blowback, and also we don't really know what happened in 9/11. You know, like if you follow Architects and Engineers for Truth, the towers fell. It's impossible for a plane to strike and for buildings to fall in that way. So most architects and engineers, they think it was a controlled demolition, and you know, they won't really do an investigation, and they want us to believe that. First, they wanted us to believe that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction. We ruined that country. And if things keep going, we're on our path to ruin many more. Like, this doesn't seem to ever stop. And then you have these reformists on the other side saying that, you know, the solution to this is peaceful coexistence, and that the United States government is somehow going to peacefully join BRICS, which is just insane to me. Like, have you seen the United States government? They are it's absolutely beyond repair. Like, there's nothing to do with peacefully. It's not going to happen.
I get a lot of flack from people when they're like, you criticize the United States so much. I'm like, look how much problems they cause around the world. I mean, not only and they don't do a damn thing for Americans. Whenever there's a crisis, they do everything they can to avoid helping Americans. Even people who claim to be American first in political office will have fuck people who gets to be victims of hurricanes and whatever other kind of disasters that are out there. But if Ukraine or Israel or whatever other country wants weapons or whatever, guess what? The cash comes out so quickly, and it's just frustrating.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. It's just frustrating how, and then I get to hear from people, we can't afford this and we can't afford that. We can't afford healthcare for all. We can't afford the better aspects of Build Back Better that never took place or what have you. We can never afford these things because, I guess we have to go and send money to places where governments destroy other people's lives.
Yeah, it's just a shame all around. I mean, the question is like what to do about it, and unfortunately, I don't know. Like, I'm trying to do what I can. You try to do what you can with this channel, just like educating people, I guess, on what can be done. But the thing that's happening right now that I feel like is a little bit scary is that I think they knew when this invasion happened that there would be blowback from people, right? There have been all of this protests and stuff, and they have to have a plan, right? And they do. They have a plan to react to this like popular criticism. Well, one of the plan is like to shut down basically freedom of speech. So they're working on all of these laws, etc., to basically stop you from being able to say what you want about what is happening.
Absolutely.
And then the second thing they're doing is they are putting in front of us these fake independent candidates like Robert Kennedy in order to give you the impression that there is some kind of alternative path headed by this liberal savior. And it's always the same, and people will say, oh, but like Robert Kennedy is not like a liberal in the sense of today. He's a past liberal. Well, if you look at the Kennedys' actual history, you'll see that that's not true. The Kennedys had a line of carnage and corpses that was basically just like a predecessor to some of the more modern Democrats. Yes, they did take him out, but I really think it's a case of like the fact that he didn't live long enough to be hated. So they were able to convert his basically presidency into they were able to turn him into a liberal martyr, basically. The way they weren't able to do that with like some of these other presidents. But at the end of the day, all he did JFK was stop. He wanted to register Israel as a foreign agent, but he was still a liberal Zionist. He, would like praise and like hail Israel as like a democratic state that was basically like built on a wasteland where there was nothing. That's what he said about Palestine, JFK. He, he would like welcome all of these African leaders during the African independence movements. Not because he gave a shit about African independence, but because he wanted to compete in terms of catering to them so that the Soviet Union didn't get to them first. So it was kind of like a Cold War competition. And he was very careful also to not actually promote African independence too much, because a lot of his allies in NATO, like Belgium and England and all of these, didn't support African independence. So he didn't, he really like kind of played both sides, President Kennedy. And internally, he tapped the phones of black activists. He, he started the blockade against Cuba. He introduced Agent Orange in Vietnam. So the Kennedys have a very screwed up history. And, I feel like the independent candidates running in New York now, that just, they won't talk about the actual history of the Kennedys. I feel like they're looking to brainwash us into believing that there can be some kind of liberal savior, and that if we just put our energy behind one of these liberal saviors, that everything will be fine. And everything isn't fine. We're headed towards World War III. China and Russia, who, those, large countries leading BRICS, who are potentially the only ones that could actually, send peacekeeping troops in order to neutralize Israel, because they have the production capacity to do it. They're not doing it. Only, I guess, Iran is participating in strategic strikes once in a while. At the same time, Iran doesn't want to get too involved, and at the end of the day, it's like people on the ground that are fighting and suffering, etc. Like there is no savior. Even BRICS is not an ultimate savior. Unfortunately for the American people, unfortunately for the American people, there is absolutely no way that the United States is going to peacefully join BRICS. And I really feel like people have to understand that there is no help coming from abroad. Nobody is going to save the people that drowned during Hurricane Ellen. If people in this country don't fight for this country, nobody's going to do it. Right now, I really feel like a lot of the independent movement, which I supported, I thought that I wanted to support a third party. So that's why I initially supported, looked into Green Party. I looked into LaRouche Institute. I looked into all of these. Libertarian Party, I even looked into them until I realized that the libertarians basically suck Zionist dick. I'm sorry. That's what they're doing. Jai funny. So the libertarians are a lost cause. The Green Party, I'm not sure. I feel like there's a bunch of people at the local level that are pretty good. At the federal level, Jill Stein, I would support her basically because it's better than what we have now, but I still consider it kind of a lesser evil vote because Jill Stein believes in simultaneous nuclear disarmament, which I find to be highly unrealistic. You cannot trust the United States to do nuclear disarmament. Look at what they're doing, and they allow Israel to do nuclear tests in Gaza. So this is just insane to me. There's no way that you can trust the United States government at this point. And even a lot of our third party movements, like LaRouche, Libertarian Party, and even the Greens, unfortunately, although I think the Greens are the ones that are least infiltrated, but they do have infiltration. I feel like Howie Hawkins for sure was he's pro-Ukraine. Someone's talking in his ear. So yeah. when I was just like so disappointed by the third parties at the end of the day, even that I was like, people just have to run as write-ins. Like, this idea has to spread, and that's just like and I'm not even sure that's the solution at the end of the day. Maybe it's just not even going to happen through elections, but it's not like there's an uprising right now. So,
well, I've said this that I'm going to vote next week, but it might be the very last election. I will vote for referendums. I will vote for, constitutional amendments if it's on the ballot. That's probably one of the few places where I will have an actual voice to exercise. But as far as voting for candidates for office, this might be my last hurrah. I have been let down time and time again, initially in the Democratic Party, initially, in third parties myself. I've been burned in faction fights and all of this sort of thing. So, just seeing what I've seen, Bernie Sanders, whatever we may think of him, getting fucked over twice. And then, having Marianne Williamson, whatever we think of her, or whatever we think of Robert Kennedy today, I mean, he was fucked over, and the Democrats, in my view, chased them into the Republican Party, just as they chased Tulsi Gabbard, who I have no respect for anymore. But
well, the ballot initiatives are a good idea. Like Roger Meadows has been pushing it incessantly. The problem in New York is that we don't have we have ballot initiatives, but you can't put them on the ballot yourself. It has to be the elected representatives that put them on. So we don't have the rule that they have in other states where like citizens can put things on the ballot. So you would essentially need to get people in. You would either need to get elected officials in to change the rule on ballot initiatives, or you would have to convince your current officials to put citizen ballot initiatives on the ballot, or you would need to overthrow the government of New York State, which I would be fine with at this point. I hate Chuck Schumer and Kathy Hochul and pretty much anybody else. I'm tired of, some of these goons in New York State. Actually, like we also send a bunch of people to Israel. The Brooklynites are, that's their name for a reason. A lot of these Zionists are in the Chabad Lubavitch headquarters is also in Brooklyn. So this is like a place where there's a lot of institutional power that actually affects foreign policy too. But it's also a place where a lot of people are sick of it.
Yes. And what's the sad part about it is you live in a place where the politics is supposed to be a little bit better than North Carolina, which the politics is horrible around here. So if now as well in New York, God knows what, as far as the rest of the country, we're fucked.
No. I mean, no, it's just as bad as North Carolina. We have the Chabad Lubavitch in Brooklyn. They have met all of the presidents. They control global Zionism. So I would not say that politics in New York is great. The difference with New York City is that I feel like the size of the population is so dramatic that it's like regular people kind of have a little bit more of a voice against the institutions, but it's not like they'll actually let you do anything at the end of the day. They might let you speak up more than you would be able to in a small town, but they also kind of allow it. They're like, well, we have to allow some protests here, like allow a protest there, but they don't want to allow the protest to change anything, right? So eventually you also get sick of going out all the time to these protests. It's like, how many times can you go to some... People in small towns might be jealous because maybe in their small town there are less protests, or you're like, if I lived in New York, things would be different. But really, a lot of the times you're going out to all of these protests, like screaming your head off, and it's like nobody's fucking listening. It's kind of a like you need protests and you need people to protest, but you also kind of need to channel those protests into something practical and like that practical thing could be, doing things on the ground. Like I feel like there should be more effort placed into an organized boycott at this point than a protest, because we've been protesting and protesting and nothing is changing. So if we did a boycott, like a boycott that I think would be really useful, is if people started pulling their money out of um, a lot of these banks, like Wells Fargo, Bank of America, Chase, etc. A lot of these banks not only give money to Israel, Citibank, but Citibank, for example, was also involved in slavery. They give money to Israel, and they were the banks that were too big to fail, that were basically responsible for the homeowner crisis in 2008. So these too big to fail banks that were bailed out by the American government when they weren't bailing out the people that were losing their homes and getting evicted, right? They don't bail out the American homeowners. They don't give reparations to the descendants of slaves. They give money to Israel to bomb Palestinians. And what people have to understand is, even if you don't agree with one of these issues, it's the same people that are doing to them what they do to us. It's the same people. So if you, for example, have an issue with the fact that the American government bailed out these banks in 2008, those are the same people that are sending money to Israel. You should close your Chase bank account, or at least withdraw some money if you have money in the bank, and put it into a federal credit union. We need to build up our federal credit unions and national banking capacities, because all of this money is controlled by banks that basically, it's like socialism for the rich, right? They get money from the government whenever they have a problem, but when we have a problem, we don't get any money, and that is like the central problem. So we need to take money away from these institutions, like, and even if people do it individually, and even if like the campaign is like the only purpose of it is to just tell people about this strategy, I feel like it's worth it to just start slowly telling people, start, if you have any money, start taking it out of these institutions. It's really important, and find a federal credit union.
Well, I actually use one bank only, and that's a state employees credit union. I actually don't believe in private banks. It's not that it's really a public bank on a state level per se, but it's the closest thing to it. So there's at least a public accountability. So I encourage people to go with credit unions.
Yeah, I mean, especially young people, like, because a lot of these banks, they have like ways of getting people to join, and people don't really think about it because they have branches everywhere, so you don't analyze your consumption patterns. So the Palestine, the BDS movement, they encourage people to boycott certain brands that are directly involved with the Israeli occupation. Some of those are like, do you remember the list of brands?
I know that there's I know that there's like a list of companies to boycott that directly deals with Israel. So
Yeah, there's like Hewlett
like
Packard,
pizza,
and like,
McDonald's,
Coke.
Starbucks.
Yeah, a bunch of others. So Puma, so there's a bunch of them, and there's like primary targets like Hewlett Packard and Puma, for example, are super involved in Israel, and then there's like secondary ones, and I encourage you to do that. The thing is, it'll only address the issue of Palestine, which is very important right now. But the problem is our entire banking system gives money to Israel, not just these companies. So if we actually practiced America first, which is what a lot of people just preach, and our banking system was devoted to the American population, then this wouldn't be as much of a problem. But that's not how things work. So
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Now, change the subject here. You're campaigning for, well, you're campaigning officially. So how's that campaign going for you?
So, I basically what I did like back in June is I campaigned just like flyering. I did a lot of flyering, and I can show you some of the flyers in the PDF if you open it up.
Yeah, let me find that PDF. I saw the PDF a second ago. Give me 2 seconds here.
So basically, I don't have. So here's the thing: in New York, you have these groups that don't believe in electoral politics, and they'll go to protests and stuff, which are great if you want to support them. Um, I supported one for a while that's called the Bronx Anti-War Coalition, and they don't support candidates. They support just protests and ground actions, right? And then there's groups that support third-party candidates, like the Green Party. The Green Party is only involved in the promotion of Jill Stein right now in New York. They're not running anybody else, I don't think.
Mm-hmm.
In my area, I'm not sure, but I don't know of anybody that they're running.
Yeah, we got Jill Stein on the ballot here in North Carolina. We have Wayne Turner running for governor. We have Michael Dublin running for the Congressional Second District. And we have a friend of mine that's running for the city council in Raleigh. And that's pretty much it.
Right. So there's not a lot of options. Then there's the LaRouche organization, they're running independent candidates that support the BRICS coalition, which I guess you would say is the best one. But I think they're in bed with the Kennedys. It's a very big problem. So that's when I realized that there's kind of like nowhere to turn. I'm just gonna flyer. This is when I met Bassem Youssef. He doesn't support my campaign. I've been trying to email him.
Right.
I met Bassem Youssef at like it was like an event. It was like I won a raffle after a comedy event that was like dinner with Bassem Youssef. So that's how I met Bassem Youssef.
Okay.
Anyway, so so it's like you have to build the third party movement, and it may take a lot of people running as write-ins and losing. Like people are like, why are you doing this if you're going to lose? I'm like, well, you have to build the third party movement. If I personally, like, I don't really believe in political parties at this point because all of the ones that I know have failed me. Like Green Party, there's like no presence in our area. I hope they're able to build it. I don't know, but at this point, like, I don't see it as a real source of local power. I don't. LaRouche organization, they're supporting the Kennedys, and promoting this idea that the Kennedys were like liberal saviors, which I don't agree with in any way, and I'm tired of arguing. I was one of the people that went to the anti-Kennedy protests, and that's when I saw them like kissing Robert Kennedy's ass on stage. These like members of Schiller Institute, when he was like being dragged like a dog by Rabbi Shmuley. That's when that whole thing started. So when I noticed that a lot of these independent movements are not really independent, they're not like completely like representing people. They're kind of representing a very specific ideology, like a political ideology related to this idea that peaceful coexistence with these violent terrorists, for example, like the IDF or the United States government, is even possible. This is not possible. So then I just put these like flyers everywhere. The interesting thing is when I put the war flyer up, a lot of people didn't even know who AOC was. So I stopped putting it up and I just put this flyer up, the one on the left. And then what I wanted to mention, like if you go to the next slide.
Yeah, hold on. Let's see. Okay, yeah.
If you go to the next slide, is that after I heckled her that time, she went to all of these left-ruled Latin American nations. She basically went on a leftist sympathy tour to Latin America after I heckled her because I said that we should have a third-party movement like they have in these countries. and then she went on the leftist sympathy tour. The reason that that works for her as a pandering strategy is because there's so many Hispanics in our area, right? It's like 60% Hispanic, our area. So a lot of these people will watch Spanish news or whatever, right? They'll see in the news like some picture of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez shaking Lula's hand, and they'll get the idea that this is like the person to vote for in district. So she has picked up a lot of support through these photo ops with kind of like left-leaning people in Latin America, and people think that she's one of us because she's acting like some kind of liberal savior. It's the same fucking strategy of acting like a liberal savior. So people don't understand a lot of the time because they're not paying attention to all the time to like political news in English a lot, and that she's in bed with Kamala Harris, that she's endorsed. If you endorse Kamala Harris, you're endorsing the genocide, period.
Absolutely, absolutely. Question for you. I don't know if you're aware of this, and I'm speaking from a perspective of somebody who's a former recovering DSA member from a long time ago. You know that DSA decided not to endorse AOC, right?
I know that they decided not to endorse AOC, but in the primary election, DSA endorsed a lot of local candidates, like local assembly members and stuff, and they were still locally endorsing Jamal Bowman and AOC. It was just like the national or something, not New York City DSA. They don't have anything going for them electorally other than AOC, so they've been clinging to that until the very last. They are Democrats through and through, the DSA.
Oh, I know. I know. I know. Years ago, I tried forming a local down here in North Carolina, and I don't know if you've heard of Frank Llewellyn, but he's the former national director, and he would not cooperate with me in trying to form a local, even though he came down here to speak to a group of DSA members, and I don't know why he decided to speak to us. But if he didn't want us to form a local, why the hell did he come down here to talk to us? So but anyway.
Well, the good thing is that her endorsement doesn't mean anything anymore because she endorsed Jonathan Soto in our district, and I flyered against her, to like show people all of the shit that she did. For example, like basically she wanted to like pander for the black vote, but she, instead of like supporting any concrete policies, she asked Brianna Joy Gray, who is black, as if like in order to basically draw the discussion away from specific policies that could help Black Americans and start talking about anything else, for example, like her mixed identity or some bullshit. So she's kind of like falling on the wrong side of people because of that. She tried to endorse Jonathan Soto in district. Jonathan Soto went around the district like talking about local infrastructure repairs, like adding a playground or decreasing the fees for Co-op City. But they don't really have any plan or even ideologically, even if they're able to do nothing ideologically, they're just not on people's side anymore because people see them as an agent of the Democrats. And Jonathan Soto tried to run on her endorsement and he lost. And I sent him an email afterwards, which he never answered, of course, where I was like, you think you're going to win next time? You're going to have to become an independent and stop sucking off AOC's teat, because this is not going to work for you your entire life if you want to become a politician. So, I have negative things to say, for example, about like this Schiller Bricks led movement led by that Diane Sayre and Vega are running in. But at least you can see that they have some headway right now because they're talking about issues that are pertinent to today. The DSA is completely stuck in the past. They want people to like vote on, I don't know what they want people to vote on anymore, but when I was campaigning, the majority of their volunteers were clustered around Astoria, which is one of the most gentrified neighborhoods in our area.
Oh yeah, that would be Nomiki Kant's backyard. Yeah, I
Yeah.
get it. Don't get me started on her. She blocked me on Twitter.
She went on Larry Sharp's show and she was like, gender is going to be such an important issue in this election. I was like, I don't really think so, no, Miki, but you go on like with your girl power your girl power thing. I'm not saying that nobody votes on gender issues. Probably there are people that do, but it's not an influential enough number of people that it's going to be like the deciding. I mean, I really think it's the economy most of the time. But
Yeah, I just can't. I just can't stand her. I mean, she just rubs me the wrong way.
yeah.
I like that. NATO new. That is her hashtag nickname. NATO new no Miki.
NATO no Miki. She's like the worst. Yeah,
Yes,
she's a neocon.
yes, she is. And I mean, she's and I know about these neocons because these people came out of the Trotskyist movement and went into the social democratic movement in this country, which but somewhat limited, and then eventually they ended up in the Reagan coalition. Some of them came back into the Democratic Party. Those are the ones that don't hate gay people. I mean,
Right.
just yeah. I know all about the neocons. They drive me nuts. So, but anyway, I think that we need to go and share with everybody that video, that infamous video with you and AOC. You having some choice words for her.
Okay.
Yeah, I love that video, by the way. So let me go ahead and let me get that out. All right, give me a moment.
Una ley de amnistía, una ley de migración hace 40 años. No, necesito hablar, necesito escucharme. Yo vine para hacer una pregunta. Señora, yo vine para hacer una pregunta. Hace 40 años que no hay una ley de amnistía en este país. ¿Ok? Todavía no hay una ley de amnistía en este país. Y el Partido Demócrata mandó $100 billones a nazis en Ucrania, que esta señora votó para eso. En este país necesitamos un tercer partido, al estilo de AMLO en México y Petro en Colombia y Boric en Chile. El Partido Demócrata no está haciendo nada por nosotros. Nosotros nos estamos registrando independiente, porque el Partido Demócrata no hace nada por nosotros. No, señora, no. Necesitamos registrarnos independientes. Yo voy a estar afuera. Yo voy a estar afuera registrando a la gente independiente.
No, why did she gotta leave?
No, necesito hacer una
She's
pregunta.
addressing her government for redress of grievance.
No.
She's
Brenda Leon, oversees Westwood, as well as transition services by Carol Camacho and Wendy Romer.
Oh, we need more of that. Thank you. I mean, I enjoy watching that. I mean, we need more of that.
So so this is to their credit. Like, one of the things that the Schiller Institute has contributed is this idea of the intervention principle, which is that basically anybody, whether or not you're part of this organization, if you think that there's a problem with your government, you should be allowed to say something in the town halls. And it's actually safer to do so than to go outside and protest, because if you go outside, you could get beaten up, right? Or you could, be infiltrated by a federale or something, like some violent person in the crowd. Whereas if you're in a town hall, basically all that happens is they can kick you out. They can kick you out violently. Like, at this point, they're like picking people up by the cuffs of their neck, and like throwing them out. But you're not. It's safer actually to protest at one of these town halls, and in small towns especially. Like, I feel like people should do it, but for some people, I don't know. People do it more in the big cities, but the idea there, to confront her in Spanish, like, people are like, why in Spanish? Well, first of all, because 60% of the district is Hispanic, so people will understand it. not everybody. The second reason is that AOC does not speak Spanish that well. And I wanted to kind of like expose her identity politics around that. And also, I knew that they would allow me to speak for longer because they wouldn't be able to follow the trail. So you can see like some other lady cutting in at the end, but like AOC didn't interrupt because she didn't know what was going on. So that's why she said, what? You know, like, what do you mean? So she doesn't understand. And that kind of allowed me to talk for longer. I actually didn't want to stand up. Like I was trying to get somebody else to do it, but they didn't want to do it. So that's why I did it at that time. Like,
no, I thought that was brilliant. I commend you for doing that. I thought that was brilliant. It was very well deserved what she received there.
So I don't know if you've seen like a lot of these channels right now pushing the idea that Kamala Harris supports amnesty, right? When I was the one that first started talking about amnesty 1 year ago at this AOC event, and everybody pretended that they didn't hear it, and now you see people talking about it at the upper echelons, basically, of the federal government. By the way, like, Kamala Harris never said she supported amnesty, right? She said that she supported a path to citizenship, which is what the Obama administration had been saying forever. They didn't do shit. Like, path to citizenship for immigration is like saying, like, it's like hopes and dreams for Americans. It doesn't mean a thing. It basically means that there's no deadline by which they have to resolve this problem, right? Because a lot of these, there's been a recent wave of Venezuelan immigrants, and people from other places as well, but in New York, like, the bulk of it is Venezuelan immigrants that are more than any other immigrant group. They're getting temporary protected status. Okay? More than any other immigrant group. So they're here legally. Like, people think that they're here illegally, but they're here legally because they get TPS, right? They're getting here. So there are these new legal immigrants. So all of these people that say that they support immigration when it's legal, this is legal what the American government is doing to you. They're bringing in all of these new people, and there's people that are undocumented that have been here for 20 years that have no path to citizenship. So the amnesty law would end that, right? Because if there's an amnesty, then you can't be here for 20 years with no path. You either become a citizen or you don't. You go back home, right? That's it. You finish this situation. So it would provide a legal solution for all of these people that have been here a long time. It doesn't mean that you're going to have open borders and, welcome 450,000 Venezuelans, among which, by the way, there's like a violent criminal gang called Tren de Aragua that has been like stealing and like doing all of these, like hitting people on the street. And not coincidentally, like Tren de Aragua is a criminal organization that the United States backed to protest against Maduro. And now these violent criminals are here in New York City, like raising the ruckus. That's the only thing AOC has done to raise the ruckus. Import these violent criminals, give them immediate temporary protected status. But what has she done for the immigrants that have been here a long time? What has she done for American citizens? What has she done for a Black agenda? What has she, she hasn't even been talking about these things. All she's done is like basically, and their policy for this, by the way, the DSA, was let them work, which was basically like give all of these people work permits right away because they're more than likely, not all of them, associated with the Venezuelan opposition. So this is like a very unpopular policy. It's like kind of a shame that independent media, I know like a lot of people, like I used to watch Jimmy Dore and stuff, and I used to think that he was great. But he's lying about amnesty. Amnesty is a grassroots demand that is about people from different countries to actually be able to get the path to citizenship that Obama always promised and never did anything about. Whereas an open border is what Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez supports, most especially for the Venezuelan immigrants that have ties to criminal gangs like, Tren de Aragua, like the United States arms these terrorists all over the world, and Venezuela is no different. They love these people that they participated in trying to overthrow Maduro. But now these people are like beating up and stealing the random, personal belongings of American citizens in Times Square, and people finally realize what this criminal gang actually is all about.
The thing about it is that I don't believe we have open borders. I mean, we don't. I mean, we have customs. Unfortunately, we have ICE too doing their shit. But
for the
all
Venezuelan migration wave, it's basically been open borders. For everyone else, there's lots of vetting. That's what, like for Muslim immigrants, there's lots of vetting. You have to follow a process. You have to have no criminal record. They analyze you very, for the Venezuelan immigration. So people have to understand it's like a lot of these allies of the United States government, like the Ukrainians, the Venezuelans. For some of these groups, it's open borders. And for people...
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. No, go ahead.
No, what I'm saying is that all these people who complain about the borders being open or what have you, they don't give a damn about what our U.S. government do in south of the border, that in the global south. They don't care about it's like. They'll do whatever they want in Latin America. They'll do whatever they want in the Middle East. They'll do whatever they want around the world, but they don't want the people coming here, the problems that was imposed on them.
Right, Willie, but I agree with you 100%. Here's the thing. Open borders is a controversial thing in the U.S. because it affects the labor force in the U.S. So if you have like a lot of people coming in that want cash jobs, it does compete on the local level with other jobs. That doesn't just happen with illegal immigration, by the way. Like, people like to shit on illegal immigration because, I mean, some of those people are the ones that work for years, backbreaking work, picking our fruits and vegetables, and for some reason people think it's okay to demonize those people, right? Just because they're illegal immigrants. So I'm not okay with that. But at the same time, you do have... open borders. Like, one of the groups that we have open borders, which people don't even talk about, is the corporations that want to import tech workers. They don't give a shit if those workers compete with American labor. They want to make America into a kind of global hub for the middle class. Well, what about our middle class? So the corporations, if they want to import, for example, engineers from India, they have this H-1B program, which Trump criticized at the time, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm not completely opposed to what he was saying at the time, because at the end of the day, if you're talking about doing what's best for your country, you should be training your own engineers, not just thinking of your country as a place where you're importing talent from all over the world, and meanwhile you're saddling your own people with thousands and thousands of dollars in student debt, while you're importing people from other countries that have gotten subsidized educations. So we are not taking care of our own people. We're importing talent from other countries. And in those countries, like, for example, India Institute of Technology, is cheaper to go there than, I think it's not free anymore, but we're importing also tech workers from China. Anyway, we're supposed to be like a hub for professional labor from all over the world. But we're not forgiving the debt of American students. We're not training our own people to fill up these jobs. It's a very big problem, and it's not just illegal immigration, right? In my district, you do have a lot of immigrants that work like in restaurant and delivery sector from Mexico and the Caribbean and Latin America. And people want to blame those people because they came in illegally. Well, that's just because they don't have the support of the corporations, right? They don't have the support of Amazon, Google, whatever. Those people bringing people in legally, and nobody has a problem with it, even though those are also competing with American jobs. So, I'm not saying that people shouldn't be able to immigrate here. Like, to a certain point, people should be able to, apply to come, whatever. But the division between legal and illegal is really a class thing. It's not, it's the corporations that are deciding who can become a citizen. And I don't think that that's okay. Like, I feel like somebody that has been doing backbreaking work, picking fruits and vegetables, should have the same chance to become a citizen as somebody that works for Amazon, or Google, as like a Google engineer or something, or, you know, as a nurse. That's been, like, we import a lot of nurses from the Philippines, for example. So why not? It really seems like a fundamental hypocrisy in our system that, like, so that's what this amnesty law resolves. And that's what, and this was a Republican idea. It was Reagan in 1981 that pushed this, you know. Now people want to act like this is some kind of like communist idea. It's not.
Mm-hmm.
It was kind of a very mainstream idea that got adopted by Reagan. Now, a lot of people have something against Reagan. Like, the true solution would not have been just amnesty. It would have been to actually fix the foreign policy. Well, Reagan never wanted to fix the foreign policy. So that people,
he didn't.
Yeah, Reagan was horrible. So I agree with that. The ideal would be that people could thrive in their own countries, and then you wouldn't have immigration at all. And that would be the ideal. But at this point, we need to do both simultaneously. We need to fix the foreign policy, and we need to have a solution for people that have been here a long time without any path to citizenship. Because if you deport them, now the families are going to be split, right? So it's a problem. Because they've been here too long. If you deport people that just arrived, it's not the same.
And as I said, it just pisses me off how they're kind of just targeted all the time, and it just, the whole idea of I mean, it's not new, this targeting. I mean, this is, they've done this with the Italians, they've done this with Polish immigrants and all this. It's just the latest chapter of what the United States likes to do too, and hopefully we'll get over this and everything. Question for you. After the campaign is over, what plans do you have on the activism level from this point on?
I mean, I think I just want to keep promoting the boycott. Like, my idea was to just keep promoting the boycott. I did go to protest for a while. I got, I'm also like, it depends how much time you have, like how young you are too. And how much energy you have to go to protests. I go once in a while to protests, but I feel like I've been more successful at like promoting ideas on YouTube and stuff, just like you, which has to do with the fact that I'm also like, BDS. I think we have to promote some kind of bank boycott separate from BDS that involves pulling our money out of some of these big banks, and ideally just like, I have a flyer that shows the boycott itself. Like, I can show you the one that I wanted to promote. It's in the PDF flyer.
Okay. Hold on a second. Let's see.
I'm glad I got to talk about the boycott because, like, I went on Sabby's. I didn't have much time to talk about it, and I was sad because that was, like, one of my main goals.
Okay. What were we looking for again on the PDF file?
It's like a flyer that says boycott the Zionist banks.
Hold on a second. Let's see. I'm scrolling. Oh, okay. I see it right here. Oh, okay. Oh, I got to get it on the screen. Sorry about that.
Oh, Choosy Heretic says, oh, you went on George Galloway? That's awesome. How do you call, every time I'm like waiting for George Galloway to come online and I don't know, and he doesn't come on. Is he on YouTube live or can you just see the segments later? And how do I call in to the George Galloway show?
That's a good question. I don't know. I listen to George Galloway. I just usually see the video clips. So I don't know if he live streams or not.
I thought he does. I've never seen a live stream and I wanted to catch him live and I don't know how to do it.
Yeah. You know what? Usually when they live stream, there's usually some announcement that, that they're going to be live streaming this. So I guess let's just keep checking the channel to see when they're going to live stream. So that's, I can find out real quick for you. hold on a second. I mean, I'm not going to play a video, but I'm just checking on his channel real quick.
So yeah, this is the flyer. It says boycott the Zionist banks. These are 6 local banks in New York that send money to Israel. Okay, but it's not just that. So even if you don't care about what's happening at all, they're also the same banks that were too big to fail. And it's Bank of America, Citi, Capital One, Barclays, Wells Fargo, and Chase. Okay, those are the big ones, and then there's a bunch of other ones too. So if you have like an account, like most people I know have an account in either Bank of America or Chase. Even you can keep your bank account like just with a small amount of money in case you need it, and then but just like take out most of your money if you have more than $1,000 in there. I know a lot of people only have $1,000 in there, so for those people, if you are able to build up your savings in the future, it's just something to think about. The federal credit unions also have like much better rates, and they won't like for example, you know when you don't have enough money in your bank account and you get overdraft fees for taking. So Chase and Bank of America are big on overdraft fees, but if you go to a credit union, they'll just like block you. So you won't get overdraft fees. You'll get a warning. So that's really important, in order to actually be able to hold on to your cash, that your bank isn't like basically out to get you. So
yeah. That's a nice feeling when they're not out to get you.
Yeah.
Too much financial institutions and insurance companies and other entities they're out to get us, all of us, at every turn. So I know what you mean. I need to probably be getting some rest soon because I have a live stream in a few hours. Do you have any final words?
No. No final words. Just the fact that I just want people to say that like my area is like it's like one of the most diverse areas in the world. The reason that somebody like AOC can win in my area is because we have very little help, like on the ground, promoting something else. We even like try to use like call-in system to get people to help out, and we really have very little help. So we are the only ones that are not for the Kennedys, not for even GP. Like everybody says that they want someone that's not attached to corrupt duopoly and the corrupt third parties, which is what's happening right now. There's a corrupt third parties, and but when somebody does it, it's very hard to get support. It really is very hard to get support, and I've experienced that. And I'm not saying that people should support me. If you don't support me, support yourself. If you live in a small town, run as a write-in candidate. It might be much easier to do it in a small town. If you live in a small town of only a couple of thousand people, you could really do this. So yeah, that's all I have to say.
Yeah. And I do think that people need to take it upon themselves to do this. The electoral system needs to be democratized, but for sure, and that's a long time away. But at the same time, there's no reason why people can't do it right now. You just never know when something can accidentally happen for the better. So,
right.
Yeah, exactly. And Miguel says that Lucy should continue to stream on her channel. So,
yep.
Yeah. And I catch you every now and then, Lucy. I was like, oh, Lucy's on. Let me go and check her out and say hello. So
I've taken to like talking about more occult things like the churches and stuff, because I feel like the churches are really like a lot of what like brainwashed people into Christian Zionism, and like there's also like spiritual ways of fighting. This is like a spiritual war.
Yeah.
Well
a lot of evangelical Christians have they're they're pretty damn obnoxious about that, about the Zionism and all of that. And the weird thing is that they hate Jewish people.
Yeah, but a lot of the atheists are terrible too, so it's kind of a mixed bag.
Oh yeah, well, well, that's true too, So, but yeah, it's everybody's fucked up. I mean, that's all I can say. Everybody's whacked. I mean, you take for example, you got Pope Francis, who's been one of the more decent popes and he spoke to Congress several years ago, and you have members of Congress, Republicans, saying, he's a horrible socialist and all this sort of shit. But when Benjamin Netanyahu comes up to speak in the House of Representatives, and it's a joint session of Congress, these same people, some of them even Catholic, they're talking shit about Pope Francis, they go and they just suck on Benjamin Netanyahu's dick while he's out there doing his little speech to the country about how Iran is bad, and I mean, it's just like, it just kills me,
Yeah. I mean, it's awful.
Yeah, so it's crazy. So anyway, let's see. Let me say my goodbyes to everyone, and I'll speak to you for maybe a brief moment. Then I got to get my beauty sleep before my show. So
okay, all right.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
If you want to find out more about the ideas behind the campaign, I made a website. It's called lucycan.com. I'll put it in the comments.
Actually, I'm going to put it in the description box as soon as I'll put it within the hour.
Yeah, and if I have like a channel that I really use more for goofing off, honestly, and like, but some people like it. It's called Blue Moon Red Wine. It's all I mean, that's for Desert Mantis, who I think is the only one here that doesn't know me. Willie, you're invited to my show anytime, but most especially when my throat clears up, because I'm feeling kind of sick.
Okay, I'll take you up on that. If you ever want to invite me, I'll come on. So
all right. Yeah. I'll see you later. Bye.
All right. And everyone,
can I go off?
If you want to, we can. Yeah.
Okay.
You can take care. Everyone, if you like what you heard, please press like and comment. Comment any way if you disagree with what I have to say. Feel free to share the content on this channel. As a First Amendment absolutist, it's my duty to inform you to create your own platform and utilize it, because we're the muckrakers of our time. In addition thereof, remember to reject corporate media, to subscribe to the Willie Bragg Show on all my platforms. And I will add this before I meant to say this, and I forgot to mention this. In the background, you can see the Collins living room from Dark Shadows. So it's just sort of thing I'm doing for Halloween right now. So be sure to watch Braglands tonight. It's going to be at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time this evening in particular. And let's see, 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. We've been just stuff happening. We've been, we're back. So honestly, we'll be on this evening. So, but we will have a new time for Braglands, and Braglands will be at, next week, starting on election night. We'll be having it on at 7 p.m. on Tuesday nights, Eastern Standard Time, 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And let's see, what else can I say is yes, pardon Julian Assange, free and pardon Ed Snowden, free Palestine, free healthcare for all, and free speech absolutism. Y'all take care. I am going to sign off. I am going to take care of a few things, and I will see y'all this evening for Braglands. Take care. Bye-bye.